Adam is chairman of the All Parliamentary Group on FinTech, is that right?
Absolutely.
All Party Parliamentary Group on FinTech. And he's going to talk a bit about why he thinks that even after Brexit is slightly irrelevant really, why we will still be the FinTech capital of the UK. And he's definitely up for taking a few questions as well. So if you'd like to welcome up stage, Adam Afriyie. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much indeed for the kind invitation this morning. I've always been very excited and thrilled to be here, and I was very keen to be here. And I do sometimes wonder whether, in addition to AltFin, we should also have AltTrans, not to do with gender reassignment, but to do with transport systems, which hopefully is coming as the next major industry in this country. And you have my assurance I will keep my remarks brief because I'd like to take one or two questions, which is part of the two-way process between politicians, lawmakers and the industry. By way of background, before getting into politics, I was a kind of serial entrepreneur in the information technology space up until about 15 years ago. I'm Member of Parliament for Windsor, the Regal constituency. I'm chair of the All Party Parliamentary Group on Financial Technology. And the key thing about that group within Parliament is that it's non-partisan. It's not Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem or Green or DUP or anything at all. It's purely a cross-party grouping of MPs who have the interests of financial technology and alternative finance in mind. And the kind of things that we do is we nudge the government to make sure the regulatory environment is actually conducive to businesses growing and investing in the UK. But we also nudge other things. Like standards in the industry, so actually it becomes more and more competitive. We also nudge towards financial inclusion, so that all these wonderful products and services that are being created in the UK can actually be spread across the whole spectrum of social class and income category. So we're keen to look at the unbanked and how alternative finance helps in that area, and many other similar areas. So it's quite an important group in Parliament. And one thing I can assure you of is that this government and previous governments, including Labour governments, have always been very keen to ensure that alternative finance, that financial technology is widely available. And the key to the future of the sector in the UK, in my view, is to ensure that it remains a non-party political issue. The second we politicians get hold of it and start arguing about it, then you're in big trouble. So that's part of my job in Westminster. But there's no better place to hold this event today than here in the city. Not only because we've been leading, #1 financial services centre probably for 200 or 300 years, but one of my other hats many years ago was I was governor of the Museum of London. And I'm very conscious, as Edward will be from Bloomberg News, that the first financial documents discovered, handwritten, were back in AD 57 on the site of the Bloomberg building, which tells you just how long actually Britain has been at the forefront of financial technology. And but we're not here to talk about the past. We're not here to talk about the past. It's wonderful to be stoic. I'm a conservative with a small c. I love to talk about the past and the halcyon days of the past. But actually our workplace is the future. And FinTech and alternative finance have the promise and the potential to be our long-term financial future, to keep the city at the heart of the United Kingdom and at the heart of our economic regeneration. So the big question is, how is it that we come to be #1? We are #1 in the world for financial technology. Ernst & Young confirmed it, 2 or 3 other indices have confirmed it for 2 or 3 years in a row. In 2016, we leapfrogged, yes, the wonderful Silicon Valley, to get into #1 slot. And the question is, why? Why has that happened, and how are we going to maintain that position? And the first observation I would make is this, is that, having a head start, and we do have a head start, is not a birthright. We can lose it within months, particularly in financial technology. You know how fast the technology moves. It can be gone in a matter of months if we get the regulation wrong, or we get something about the immigration system wrong, or somehow our leaders upset other world leaders and they start clamping down on investments in the United Kingdom. So it's very, very key that we have a correct political and governmental environment. So why are we #1? Well, first, London and the UK, I'm just going to say it, it's just fantastic, isn't it? What a wonderful culture we have here. No matter where I was living in the world, I'm quite sure that I'd love to come and be in the city of London, in the United Kingdom, for so many reasons. #1, if I want to improve my English, I recognise that English is the language of technology and finance. then I want to be in Britain, don't I? Surely. Number two, you've got a massively educated workforce here in London, the South East, and across the United Kingdom. Just fantastically educated. Degree level, PhD level, and even on the vocational level. Very well qualified people, not just British people, but people from around the globe. There is a real big pool of international talent here. Thirdly, what fantastic culture, and it's an international culture. For those of you here who aren't British, I'm sure you can confirm, when you walk around London, doesn't matter which part of London you walk around or our city centres, you feel quite at home. You keep bumping into people from your home country, multilingual, multicultural. It's a fantastic place to be. No wonder people want to be here early. And I remember having supper with Eric Schmidt of Google many years ago at number 11 with George Osborne back in the day. And, I said, why is it that you're investing so much in the United Kingdom? And he said, well, fundamentally, he said, look, America is the big market. It's a big world market, but British people are early adopters. You know, even our silver surfers, they adopt things early. We're quick to lap up the technology and begin using it, despite what people may kind of stereotypically think of the British. So it's a great place to develop products, and then from that platform with the UK to extend to the rest of the world. I think there's the other reason that we're good at FinTech, and will hopefully remain in number one slot, is our regulatory environment. So we have the Financial Conduct Authority, love them or hate them, but there's no denying that they are world respected and world renowned for having the right kind of structure for financial technology and its regulation. It's kind of light touch on the one hand, but it's also quite clear that you have to define what your business model is so that it can fit within our regulatory framework. But they're not just going to wag their finger at you and say, you've got to do it this way. There's actually a regulatory sandbox where several hundred companies over the next year or so will be able to take their products, deliver them to market in a very controlled fashion, not to the whole market so there's systemic risk. So the really innovative products can be brought to market through a regulatory sandbox where it can all be tried and tested and worked out before it goes nationwide or international. And that's a great service that they offer. We also had the recent CMA, Competition and Markets Authority, remedies, which said that in accordance with some of the European regulation, but said that we've got to have an open banking entity. Sounds incredibly tedious, but you guys will know what it means. What it means is that here in the UK, we are pretty much the first country to develop a set of standards for data interchange around banking. So the big nine can share their data with relative ease, whether love it or hate it, we don't know, but relative ease with other innovative companies who can then add products and services to help consumers. And let me be clear about this. Your politicians, your government, and your parliament are committed to financial technology. The government is keen on the inclusion of those who are unbanked. It is keen on industry and the jobs that it creates, and also is very keen on competition. There's a temptation in emerging industries to say that we've got to be protected if we're the first there or if we're the biggest there. This is not a government that's committed to protecting the biggest. It's committed to protecting competition so that every one of you in this room is nervous every day that somebody's going to get ahead of you. Why? So you work harder, you develop more productive services and products that people want to buy. And from a parliamentary point of view, like I say, it's non-party political, and this is the sweet spot, if you like, for any industry and for any issue in the public domain in Britain, is if you're in the non-political space, which is firmly where alternative finance and financial technology sits, then you're in that sweet spot where you'll be able to grow. But more importantly than that, a lot of people think governments are distant. We politicians are kind of grumpy middle-aged men. Well, I suppose I am, but that we're unapproachable. That's what the APPG is for. If there's a challenge or a barrier that you see within the sector which is holding back growth, then just approach us. You know, the government is all ears, the civil servants are all ears, even the Treasury is all ears to listen to actually how can we maintain our slot as number one in the world. But of course, most of this is seen through the lens of Brexit at the moment. I won't bang on about Brexit, but I'll take one or two questions. But let's be clear. With the agreements that have been reached so far, it seems pretty clear at the moment that actually out the other side of Brexit we will have some sort of acknowledgement and some sort of free trading arrangement or trading relationship with the European Union which does incorporate alternative finance. And the reason that I'm absolutely confident that there will be an arrangement that whatever you're developing here in the UK, whatever you're investing here in the UK, 1.8 billion invested in venture capital in FinTech last year in the UK, whatever your investment is in the UK, it's going to be pretty safe. Why? Because a lot of the European banking sector relies on the UK for its services. Why? Because both sides, free trade brings benefits to both sides. So unless the politicians become overly animated and overly egotistical about their projects, it's pretty likely we're going to reach some sort of understanding. Whether it's passporting or something different almost doesn't matter. But the key thing is this, and I say this to every one of you in this room, Britain is open for business, and every one of you is part of, if there is a slightly different arrangement with the EU after we leave, then it's up to every one of you in this room to find the little gap, find the opportunity. I used to like Only Fools and Horses, and where there's muck, there's brass. When it's messy and complicated, there's money to be made in smoothing it out, in making sure that your alternative finance services plug those gaps. So I'm optimistic for the future. There's going to be a bumpy road. There's going to be a lot of political arguments still to come. We're going to be nervous until the 29th of March 2019, but fundamentally, since AD 57, we've been one step ahead of the game, and I hope that for many years and decades and centuries ahead will continue to be in that place if you guys stay focused on making money, on finding those gaps and being efficient. Thank you very much indeed.
Adam, I'll just ask you a couple of quick questions. Won't tough rules and immigration stymie fintech growth?
Yeah,
that's not even a Brexit question, really. That could just be a general question.
No, absolutely. Yeah, well, immigration is an interesting word, isn't it? I say immigration, probably most of you in this room will think, yeah, exceptionally talented people. We need a good flow of them, PhDs in universities, academics. It's really good, really positive thing, great for the economy. If I say immigration to another group of people, they'll think illegal immigrants hanging on the side of trains at Calais. If I say immigration to another group of people, they'll think, students coming here to study, investing money in the United Kingdom. If I say it to another group, basically the word immigration means so many different things, so therefore I'm going to just narrow it down to exceptional talent for the moment. So in terms of immigration, most people aren't aware, but the government has already doubled the number of exceptional talent visas for people working in the UK. So whether it's the international Indians or just the international set that have the skills that Britain needs around fintech and anything high tech or advanced, then basically the number of visas has already been doubled. We're probably going to have to double it again, and this has happened before we even left the European Union. There is no doubt that when we come to the immigration debate in the House of Commons, there'll be a lot of noise. But I am in absolutely I've not met a single member of Parliament who says, we can't have any high talent people coming to Britain. There's nobody. So sometimes you'll see stories in the press, scaremongering. It's all about, especially after Nigel Farage stuff, it's all about closing the borders. It's nothing to do with that. It's actually about opening up to the rest of the world, so that rather than making it easy only for European citizens to be able to come and work in the UK if they're exceptionally talented, it's going to be about actually everyone from the whole world being able to come to the UK when we have skills shortages or when we need that sort of talent to really drive our industries forward. So on that note, it's going to be noisy, but I'm pretty positive that we'll remain an open economy.
The other quick question is, last week we had the Chancellor talking about FinTech and about links maybe with Australia and putting Britain's role forward. Is the APPG going to be behind that, and any practical ideas about how we can make that work?
Yeah, so already we have very strong relationships with the rest of the world when it comes to financial technology. Interestingly enough, particularly around the area of regulation. So our FCA, as I say, is world renowned already, and the Australians are looking to pretty much copy what we've done. This is a really positive thing. When it comes to open banking standards, the rest of the world is already looking at us to see how can they copy what we're doing. And you may think, well, hang on a second, aren't we giving away our comparative advantage by allowing them to copy our standards? No, is the simple answer to that. Because if basically, and I had the South Korean delegation come over and visit me as the APPG chair the other day. From all over the world, people come to the UK. I have the Milken Institute on the phone to me from the US saying, hey, how are you guys doing this? I don't want to give away how we're doing it because I want us to stay ahead, but I do my best to be helpful. But the key thing is this, is that if we develop the regulatory standards and the technical standards here in the UK, and the rest of the world begin to adopt those standards, then that is the way that actually we enable the whole world market for financial technology to work. And already, like I say, the Australians, the Canadians are looking at what we're doing as well. The rest of the world is already flying into Britain to have a look at how we're doing it. And the main thing is for us to maintain, and it sounds a bit kind of, I know when you're in business, I was in business, it's always about goal driven, it's got to be exactly this or exactly that. But in politics, it's slightly different. It's more about constantly having a dialogue so that your ideas and your standards begin to permeate. And there's already talk of actually, just like we have international institutions already, which are voluntary, we adhere to, there's already talk of creating international institutions around the standards for open banking and financial technology, not so it can be regressive, but so that perhaps IP version 1 arises as a platform for the development of everything else on top, which makes it more competitive. Now, I can talk the hind legs off a donkey. Shall I stop there?
One more question.
One more, okay.
Just one very practical question. European investment funds. We are leaving Europe. There is going to be an impact on the EIF. Do you think the British Business Bank is going to step up to the mark, take over the EIF functions?
I think that the British Investment Bank is ready to do that. Not quite ready, but it's ready to do that. I think that the government is ready to make sure that the British institutions are able to plug the gap. But at the moment, the evidence just isn't there that people are withdrawing from the UK, funding the UK. Even at this stage, it looks like already that this year may well be another record year for investment into FinTech in the United Kingdom. Now that's incredible, given that we had a vote to leave the European Union and everybody thought it would be hell on earth and thousands of jobs going and people fleeing the country. Actually, it's in the FinTech area, it's exactly the opposite. More people are investing, 1.8 billion last year in terms of venture capital into the UK FinTech. There was one quarter, I think it was, or maybe 5 months where we went backwards. Pretty much immediately after leaving the EU vote. As soon as the markets worked it out, suddenly a record year. So I think that the point is this, is that the UK institutions, the things that the government can control or nudge or support, will stand ready to backfill if necessary. But I genuinely don't believe, we need to be prepared, but I genuinely don't believe there'll be a need for this. I think actually, the international capital will recognise that this is the FinTech capital and the two will join together. So thank you very much indeed for listening, and please enjoy the rest of your day, and please do not be shy about getting in touch with MPs and saying, look, these are the barriers, obstacles we have. Don't be shy of getting in touch with the APPG. And I want to say a huge thanks to Samir, who was here earlier. I met him when I was Shadow Minister for Science many years ago. And at that time, everyone thought that, we don't want regulation around this sector, because we want the freedom to develop all the products that we want to develop. Samir came to me and said, no, we want exactly the opposite. We want our business models to be recognised and acknowledged by the regulators and by governments, so that we are then have a licence, if you like, or an imprimatur, that we're safe, that we're stable. And he was talking about trust today. Funny enough, we had a very similar conversation a long time ago. So Samir from Funding Circle, great organisation, and I think that he's entirely consistent. And what we stand ready to do in Westminster is to make sure that the regulatory platform is conducive to what you want to do. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.